Hey guys, tonight we step into the muddy boots of a medieval knight, standing in the gray light of dawn as cold mist drifts across a castle courtyard. Horses snort in the chill air. Blacksmiths hammer away in the distance. Somewhere nearby, a rooster announces the start of another difficult day. At first glance, this might sound exciting. After all, knights are supposed to be heroes. They're brave warriors in shining armor, charging into battle and winning glory. The problem is that reality tends to be much less glamorous. In fact, if we're being honest, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know your location and local time in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where in the world people are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The dream of becoming a knight begins long before you ever touch a sword. From the time you're old enough to walk, people around you are already imagining your future, not necessarily because they care about your dreams. Medieval society isn't particularly interested in personal fulfillment. Instead, your future is largely determined by the circumstances of your birth. If you're fortunate enough to be born into a noble family, everyone expects you to follow a specific path. That path leads toward knighthood, and at first it sounds wonderful. Stories celebrate knights as heroes, poets write songs about their courage, nobles praise their loyalty. Religious leaders speak about their duty. The image is impressive. A knight appears strong, respected, powerful, important. Looking from the outside, it seems like one of the best lives available in medieval Europe. Unfortunately, appearances can be misleading. Very misleading. Imagine someone today describing a career only by mentioning the rewards. They tell you about respect, adventure, status, recognition, but somehow forget to mention the exhausting work, constant danger, crushing expenses, and possibility of dying in a muddy field far from home. That is essentially how medieval knighthood is advertised. The recruitment brochure is excellent. The actual experience is considerably less appealing. As a child, you hear stories about famous warriors. You hear about glorious battles, heroic victories, legendary deeds. Nobody spends much time discussing infected wounds, chronic pain, financial ruin, or sleeping outdoors during freezing rain. Those details tend to remain conveniently absent. Yet they are every bit as real as the heroic tales, perhaps more real. The average knight spends far more time being uncomfortable than being glorious. The medieval world itself contributes heavily to this discomfort. Life is physically demanding. Even wealthy people lack most modern conveniences. There is no central heating, no electric lighting, no reliable plumbing, no comfortable mattress waiting at the end of a difficult day. Daily life requires effort, constant effort, and that's before adding the responsibilities of military service. You begin to understand this gradually. At first, knighthood still seems exciting. You watch older knights ride through the countryside. Their armor gleams in sunlight. Their horses appear magnificent. People move aside when they pass. Villagers stare with admiration. Children dream of becoming just like them. From a distance, they look unstoppable. Then you spend more time around them, and the illusion starts cracking. You notice the scars, the limp hidden beneath confidence, the tired expressions after long journeys, the complaints about equipment costs, the endless concerns about politics and obligations. Being a knight is not simply a profession. It's a lifestyle built around responsibility. And responsibility rarely feels as exciting as adventure stories suggest. A knight serves powerful lords. A knight manages land. A knight trains constantly. A knight prepares for war, even during times of peace. There is always something demanding attention. Always another obligation waiting. Always another problem to solve. The romantic image begins fading. Reality takes its place. One of the first unpleasant truths concerns danger. Modern people often associate danger with dramatic moments. Car chases, explosions, action movie scenes. Medieval danger is different. It's persistent. Everywhere. Travel is dangerous. Illness is dangerous. Accidents are dangerous. Food shortages are dangerous. Political disputes are dangerous. War is dangerous. Even seemingly ordinary activities carry risks. The world lacks many protections that modern societies take for granted. A simple infection can become life-threatening. A minor injury can create lasting problems. Everyday existence contains uncertainties that would make most modern people deeply uncomfortable. Knights are not immune. In fact, their profession often increases exposure to risk. People expect them to fight, to travel, to lead, to put themselves in harm's way. All those expectations come with consequences. Another misconception involves wealth. Many people imagine every knight as rich. Some certainly are. Many are not. Maintaining the appearance and equipment of a knight costs an enormous amount of money. War is expensive. Weapons are expensive. Horses are expensive. Servants cost money. Travel costs money. Everything costs money. The image of effortless, noble luxury quickly falls apart when bills start arriving. A surprising number of knights spend their lives worrying about finances, not exactly the glamorous warrior fantasy most people imagine. Yet despite all these challenges, people continue pursuing knighthood. Why? Partly because status matters. Being a knight provides opportunities unavailable to ordinary people. It brings influence, respect, social standing, in some cases, wealth. For ambitious families, those rewards can outweigh the hardships. At least in theory. Whether individual knights agree is another matter entirely. As evening approaches, you find yourself reflecting on the strange contradiction at the heart of medieval knighthood. It is both admired and miserable, prestigious and exhausting, powerful and vulnerable. People celebrate the image. The reality demands endurance. A great deal of endurance. And you've only just begun. Because tomorrow, your training starts. And you'll soon discover that becoming a knight requires years of discipline, discomfort, and hard work before you ever come close to earning a sword, a horse, or a title. By sunrise the next morning, your new life has already become much less glamorous. Yesterday, being a knight sounded heroic. Today, you're discovering that becoming one begins with something far less exciting. Growing up, not just growing up, but growing up exactly the way everyone else expects. In medieval Europe, your childhood is not entirely your own. If you're born into a noble family, your future has already been planned long before you understand what the word future even means. Nobody gathers you around the fireplace to ask about your dreams. Nobody hands you a list of career options. Nobody says, follow your passion. Instead, your family quietly assumes you'll spend your life serving your lord, defending your lands, and eventually earning the title of knight. Whether you like the idea or not, hardly enters the conversation. Around the age of 7, your real education begins. And by education, we don't mean mathematics, literature, or learning several foreign languages. Those subjects certainly exist. But your daily lessons revolve around something much more practical: obedience, discipline, responsibility, service. You're sent away from your parents to live in the household of another noble family. To modern ears, that sounds heartbreaking. Imagine packing a small bag before elementary school and discovering you'll now be living somewhere else for years. No weekend visits, no video calls, no text messages telling your parents everything is fine. You're expected to adapt quickly. Homesickness isn't considered a medical condition. It's simply another challenge to overcome. Your new role is called a page. The title sounds impressive. The duties are rather less impressive. You wake early, very early, before the castle fully comes to life. Servants are already working. Kitchen fires are burning. Stable hands are feeding horses. The entire household functions like a carefully organized machine. And now you're one very small part of it. Your responsibilities include carrying messages, serving meals, helping noble guests, cleaning equipment, learning proper manners, watching older knights carefully. At first, this doesn't feel much like training for legendary battles. It feels suspiciously similar to doing chores. That's because it largely is. The medieval world believes that before someone can command others, they must first learn to serve. Humility comes before authority. Whether every future knight enjoys this lesson is another matter. You certainly have mixed feelings. Some days are fascinating. You stand quietly in great halls while nobles discuss politics. You watch experienced warriors examine weapons. You listen to stories of distant battles. The castle feels alive with history. Every corridor seems to contain another secret. Other days involve polishing equipment until your arms ache. Carrying heavy supplies across endless staircases. Running errands from sunrise until sunset. Heroic? Not exactly. Educational? Absolutely. Gradually, older knights begin paying attention to you, not because you've become extraordinary, because they're evaluating your character. Can you follow instructions? Can you stay calm? Can you work hard without constant supervision? Can you remain respectful even when exhausted? Physical strength matters. Character matters more. At least in theory, the training extends far beyond household duties. Every opportunity becomes a lesson. You're taught how to ride horses confidently, not merely sitting in the saddle, actually controlling a large, powerful animal that possesses its own opinions. War horses are magnificent creatures. They're also expensive, intelligent, and occasionally stubborn. Building trust takes time. Building confidence takes even longer. You fall more than once, sometimes into mud, sometimes into embarrassment, usually both simultaneously. Fortunately, you're surrounded by people who have experienced the same thing. Most simply laugh, then tell you to climb back into the saddle. Swordsmanship also begins surprisingly early. At first, real weapons remain out of reach. Instead, you practice with wooden swords. Hours pass repeating identical movements. Again, and again. The goal isn't excitement. It's muscle memory. When danger eventually arrives years later, there won't be time to think through every motion. Your body must already know what to do. The repetition becomes exhausting. Yet slowly, almost invisibly, improvement arrives. You begin moving with greater confidence. Your balance improves. Your reactions become faster. Small victories accumulate, not dramatically. Quietly, archery enters your education. So does hunting, falconry, swimming whenever possible. Physical fitness isn't viewed as a hobby. It's considered essential preparation for survival. The medieval knight must become comfortable outdoors, comfortable in forests, comfortable in rain, comfortable in cold weather. Nature doesn't adjust itself to your preferences. You adjust yourself to nature. The lessons continue inside the castle as well. Table manners, religious instruction, court etiquette, conversation with nobles, respect for rank. A careless word spoken to the wrong person can create as much trouble as a careless sword stroke. Power in medieval society depends heavily upon relationships. Knowing how to behave proves almost as valuable as knowing how to fight. Of course, not every lesson is enjoyable. Discipline can be strict. Mistakes carry consequences. Adults of the medieval world generally believe hardship builds character. Whether that's true or not, hardship certainly becomes familiar. Long days, cold mornings, endless practice, high expectations, little praise. You're expected to improve because improvement is your duty, not because someone promises a reward. As the years pass, your body grows stronger. Your confidence slowly increases. Yet one realization becomes impossible to ignore. You've trained for years, and you still aren't a knight. You're only preparing to become one. The destination remains distant. There is always another lesson waiting, another skill requiring improvement, another responsibility demanding attention. The romantic dream that began in childhood has transformed into routine. Demanding, structured, often exhausting routine. And oddly enough, that's exactly how medieval society intends it. Because before you're trusted with armor, weapons, and the lives of others, the world wants to know whether you can first master yourself. Tomorrow, that challenge grows even greater. You'll become a squire. The responsibilities multiply. The expectations become heavier. And you'll finally discover that serving a real knight can be every bit as exhausting as fighting beside one. Several years have passed. You're taller now, stronger, more confident around horses, far more comfortable inside a castle than you once were. You know which staircases lead to the armory. Which servants appreciate a polite greeting? Which stable doors always stick during rainy weather? You understand the rhythm of noble life. Just when you begin feeling experienced, medieval society decides you're ready for the next step. Congratulations. You've been promoted. You are now a squire. The title sounds important, and it is. It also comes with an impressive collection of responsibilities that somehow manage to begin before sunrise and continue well after sunset. If being a page was an apprenticeship in discipline, being a squire is an apprenticeship in endurance. From this point forward, your life revolves around one person, an experienced knight. He is your teacher, your commander, sometimes your protector, occasionally your harshest critic. Your success depends largely upon how much you can learn from him and how patient he feels on any given day. Every morning begins the same way. Long before your knight is awake, you're already working. His horse must be fed, its saddle inspected, its hooves checked, its equipment cleaned. A warhorse is one of the most valuable possessions a knight owns. Treating it carelessly is unthinkable. You quickly discover that horses possess personalities. Some are calm. Some are stubborn. Some seem personally offended by your existence. The enormous animal you're caring for today appears determined to test your patience. It nudges you, steps sideways at inconvenient moments, then casually steals part of your breakfast. The horse, you suspect, enjoys this. Once the horse is ready, attention shifts to armor. Piece by piece, you inspect every buckle, every leather strap, every metal plate, every rivet. Armor is expensive. Damaged armor can become deadly. If something breaks during battle because you overlooked a loose strap, the consequences could be catastrophic. The responsibility weighs heavily, literally and figuratively. Eventually, your knight appears. Unlike the heroic legends, he doesn't leap dramatically into polished armor while inspirational music plays. Instead, he yawns, complains about the weather, stretches a sore shoulder, and asks whether breakfast is ready. Even medieval heroes have ordinary mornings. Helping someone into armor is surprisingly complicated. Individual pieces must be fastened in the correct order. Everything needs proper adjustment. Too loose, and protection suffers. Too tight, and movement becomes difficult. You spend enough time assisting with armor that you begin wondering whether medieval fashion secretly existed to confuse future historians. Once equipped, your knight finally looks every bit the legendary warrior people admire. You know better. You watch the entire process, including the part where he nearly dropped a glove and muttered something distinctly unheroic under his breath. Training occupies much of the day. Now, however, you're no longer practicing with simple wooden weapons. Real steel enters your education. The first time you hold an actual sword, its weight surprises you. Movies often make swords appear effortless. Reality prefers honesty. A sword feels substantial, powerful, demanding. Every swing requires control. Technique matters more than strength alone. Your knight demonstrates patiently, again and again. When you repeat the movement incorrectly, he corrects you. Sometimes gently, sometimes less gently. Progress arrives slowly, very slowly. The same applies to lance practice. Charging with a lance while controlling a galloping horse is far more difficult than it appears. Your horse has ideas. Gravity has ideas. The target has absolutely no intention of helping. Your first attempts are memorable for all the wrong reasons. You miss, lose balance, nearly fall, then actually fall. The ground remains remarkably consistent. It is always hard. Fortunately, medieval training expects failure. No one becomes a skilled knight immediately. Experience grows through repetition. Thousands of repetitions. Combat skills represent only part of your education. Your knight also teaches judgment. How to read another warrior's intentions. How to recognize dangerous terrain. How to spot an ambush before it's too late. How to remain calm when everyone else begins panicking. These lessons cannot easily be learned from books. They come from experience, often painful experience. Travel becomes increasingly common. You accompany your knight across forests, villages, rivers, and muddy roads. The journeys rarely resemble romantic adventures. Rain soaks your clothes. Cold winds follow you for miles. Roads disappear beneath deep mud. Sometimes the day's greatest achievement is simply reaching the next village before darkness falls. Meals during travel are equally unpredictable. Fresh bread if you're fortunate. Dry bread if you're not. Cheese, salted meat. Occasionally something warm. You quickly learn never to become overly attached to comfort. Comfort is temporary. Responsibility is permanent. Along the way, you observe your knight dealing with countless people, nobles, farmers, priests, merchants, messengers. Every conversation matters. One careless insult can create enemies. One wise decision can prevent conflict entirely. You begin understanding that the sword is not always a knight's greatest weapon. Sometimes diplomacy proves far more valuable. At night, after long days of riding and training, exhaustion settles over the camp. You clean weapons before sleeping. Feed horses again. Repair damaged equipment. Prepare everything for tomorrow. Only then do you finally rest. Looking up at the stars, you realize something. You're working harder than ever before. Yet you're still not a knight. The title remains just beyond reach. Years of service continue stretching ahead. The medieval world believes important responsibilities must be earned gradually. It is testing your patience as much as your courage. And perhaps that's the point. Because one day, someone may trust you with lives besides your own. Before that happens, the world wants absolute confidence that you can shoulder responsibility without complaint. Tomorrow brings one of the greatest challenges yet. You'll finally experience what every aspiring knight both dreams about and quietly fears. Wearing a full suit of medieval armor, and you'll quickly discover that shining steel is much heavier, hotter, and far less comfortable than the legends ever admit. After years of serving as a page and then a squire, the day you've imagined since childhood finally arrives. Today, you wear the armor, not just a helmet, not just a breastplate, the entire collection. Every polished steel plate, every leather strap, every buckle, every carefully fitted piece that transforms an ordinary person into what looks like an unstoppable medieval warrior. Standing beside the armor, you feel excited, proud, a little nervous, mostly excited. From a distance, the suit looks magnificent. The polished steel reflects the morning sunlight. Every plate has been carefully shaped, every rivet carefully placed. It's easy to understand why artists have painted knights in shining armor for centuries. Unfortunately, artists almost never paint what happens 10 minutes later. Because now it's time to put the armor on. You quickly discover something surprising. You cannot do it alone. Hollywood often shows heroes casually dressing themselves in full armor before marching confidently into battle. Reality is considerably less convenient. Your squire, well, in this case, another helper, begins fastening each piece. First comes the padded linen garment underneath. Without it, the steel would rub painfully against your skin. Already, you're warmer than you'd like. And the steel hasn't even arrived yet. Next come the leg protections. Then the arm pieces, the breastplate, the backplate, shoulder guards, gauntlets, helmet. Each section must be secured correctly. Each buckle carefully tightened. The process takes time. Far more time than most people imagine. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of straps, buckles, adjustments, and repeated checks, you're finished. You stand. You take your first few steps, and immediately notice something. This is heavy, not impossibly heavy. Modern myths sometimes exaggerate medieval armor, claiming knights could barely move. That's not true. A well-made suit is surprisingly flexible. You can walk, run, ride, fight, even climb onto a horse. But comfortable? Absolutely not. Imagine wearing thick winter clothing. Now imagine wrapping your entire body in shaped steel. Then spend the whole day moving around. You begin appreciating why experienced knights develop incredible physical fitness. Your shoulders feel the weight. Your hips carry part of the load. Your neck supports the helmet. Every movement reminds you that you're wearing metal. The sound follows you everywhere. Clink, clank, Scrape. Every step announces your presence. Stealth, unsurprisingly, is no longer one of your greatest strengths. The castle courtyard becomes your training ground. Walking first, then jogging, then climbing stairs. Each activity feels strangely different. Simple movements require slightly more effort, not because the armor prevents movement, because your body is carrying dozens of extra pounds every second. Your breathing grows heavier. Your muscles begin working harder. And this is only practice. No enemy is trying to hit you yet. The helmet deserves special attention. From the outside, it looks intimidating. From the inside, it feels remarkably small. Your vision narrows. Instead of seeing everything around you, you're now looking through relatively small openings. Peripheral vision almost disappears. Hearing becomes muffled. Voices sound distant. Breathing grows warmer inside the enclosed steel. You suddenly understand why knights depended heavily upon awareness before putting on helmets. Once the visor closes, the world becomes smaller. A trainer approaches unexpectedly from your side. You barely notice until he's standing beside you. Lesson learned. Always pay attention before the helmet comes down. As the morning continues, the sun climbs higher. The temperature rises. The steel begins warming. You begin warming much faster. Sweat forms beneath the padded clothing. Then beneath the armor itself. Unfortunately, removing the armor simply because you're uncomfortable isn't an option. You continue training. Swinging swords. Holding shields. Mounting horses. Dismounting again. Everything demands energy. Everything produces more heat. You had imagined looking heroic. Instead, you're mostly trying not to overheat. Water becomes extremely important. Unfortunately, drinking isn't particularly convenient. Someone often has to help remove parts of your helmet. Another reminder that armor provides protection at the cost of independence. Maintenance proves equally demanding. At the end of training, the work isn't finished. Far from it. Every piece must be cleaned, mud removed, leather inspected, steel dried carefully. Rust is a constant enemy. Neglecting maintenance shortens the life of equipment worth an enormous amount of money. So after spending the day wearing armor, you spend part of the evening caring for it. The irony isn't lost on you. Armor protects you. You protect the armor. The relationship feels surprisingly balanced. As days pass, your body slowly adapts. Muscles strengthen. Balance improves. Movements become more efficient. The weight never disappears. You simply become better at carrying it. Experienced knights move with remarkable confidence because they've spent years training exactly this way. The armor hasn't become lighter. They've become stronger. Still, certain inconveniences never truly vanish. Scratches, pressure points, bruises, heat, fatigue. Long rides become more tiring. Long battles become exhausting. Standing for extended periods becomes uncomfortable. The shining image celebrated in stories always comes with hidden costs. And then there's rain. Rain introduces entirely new frustrations. Wet leather straps, slippery surfaces, mud sticking to boots, cold water finding tiny openings between armor pieces. Nothing about wearing steel becomes more enjoyable during a storm. Quite the opposite. As evening approaches, you finally remove the helmet. Fresh air rushes across your face. You hadn't realized how much you missed it. Your shoulders ache. Your neck feels stiff. Your back reminds you that gravity has been working faithfully all day. Yet despite everything, despite the heat, the weight, the discomfort, the endless maintenance, you feel a quiet sense of accomplishment. Because today you experience something few people ever truly understand. Armor isn't magic. It doesn't transform ordinary people into invincible heroes. It transforms determined people into protected, exhausted warriors who must train constantly just to function effectively. Tomorrow, you'll leave the safety of the castle behind, because armor exists for one purpose: war. And once you begin marching across muddy roads with an army, you'll discover that life on campaign is even more miserable than wearing the armor itself. Morning arrives long before you're ready for it. The castle is still wrapped in darkness when someone pounds on your wooden door. There's no gentle alarm clock, no comforting ringtone, just a loud voice announcing that the army marches today. For a brief moment, you consider pretending to be asleep. Unfortunately, medieval military discipline is remarkably good at recognizing that particular strategy. Within minutes, the courtyard is alive with movement. Horses stamp impatiently. Servants rush from one task to another. Blacksmiths make final adjustments to armor. Carts are loaded with supplies. Officers shout instructions across the cold morning air. The excitement is real. So is the anxiety. You've spent years preparing for this moment. Now you're finally leaving the safety of the castle behind. At first, the journey almost feels adventurous. The rising sun paints the countryside in shades of gold. Morning mist hangs over quiet fields. Birds sing from distant trees. For a little while, you almost understand why poets loved writing about campaigns. Then the walking begins. And it keeps going. Hour after hour. Mile after mile. The medieval army moves slowly. Very slowly. Thousands of people travel together. Knights, foot soldiers, archers, blacksmiths, priests, cooks, servants, merchants hoping to profit from the campaign. Wagons full of food. Extra horses, pack animals, carrying supplies. The entire column stretches across the landscape like a moving town. Progress depends on the slowest members. If one wagon breaks down, everyone waits. If heavy rain turns roads into mud, everyone struggles. If a bridge collapses, everyone searches for another crossing. Patience becomes one of the most valuable military skills. Unfortunately, patience is difficult when your boots are already wet. By midday, your feet begin complaining. The roads aren't smooth. Most aren't really roads at all by modern standards. They're dirt tracks, covered in stones, deep ruts, loose gravel, and, whenever it rains, astonishing amounts of mud. Your expensive boots sink into the ground with every step. Each foot suddenly feels twice as heavy. Walking becomes exhausting. You glance toward the mounted knights. They appear much more comfortable. At least until you remember they've spent hours bouncing on horseback while wearing steel armor. Perhaps nobody is particularly comfortable. The weather refuses to cooperate. Morning sunshine disappears behind dark clouds. A cold wind sweeps across the fields. Before long, rain begins falling. Not dramatically, not in cinematic fashion. Just steady, relentless rain. Exactly the kind that soaks everything. Your cloak grows heavier. Leather straps absorb water. The road transforms into slippery brown clay. Every wagon struggles. Every horse slips occasionally. Every soldier quietly wonders whose brilliant idea it was to march today. The answer, naturally, belongs to someone dry and comfortable several miles away. Campaign life quickly teaches another lesson. Schedules mean very little. You might expect to stop for lunch at a reasonable hour. Instead, you halt whenever circumstances allow. Sometimes that's noon. Sometimes much later. Sometimes not until everyone's patience has completely disappeared. Meals are equally unpredictable. Today's lunch consists of coarse bread, salted meat, perhaps a small piece of cheese if supplies remain generous. Fresh fruit is rare, hot meals even rarer during long marches. The food isn't terrible. It's simply repetitive. By the third consecutive day of identical meals, your appreciation for variety grows dramatically. As afternoon continues, fatigue spreads through the army. Conversation becomes quieter. People conserve energy. The excitement that filled the morning gradually disappears. Marching proves surprisingly lonely, despite thousands of companions. Everyone focuses on reaching the next campsite. Nothing else matters. Late in the day, officers finally announce the evening halt. Relief spreads through the column almost instantly. Then reality arrives once again. Stopping doesn't mean resting immediately. First, camp must be built. Tents raised. Horses fed. Equipment inspected. Weapons cleaned. Firewood gathered. Water located. Only after all the work is complete does anyone truly relax. You discover that military camps resemble temporary villages. Every person has responsibilities. Some prepare food. Some guard the perimeter. Others repair equipment damaged during the day's march. Even after hours of walking, the work continues. Your own responsibilities begin with your horse. The poor animal has carried equipment all day. Now it needs food, water, attention. Only after caring for the horse do you begin thinking about yourself. It seems medieval life consistently places personal comfort near the bottom of the priority list. As darkness falls, campfires appear across the landscape. Hundreds of small flames flicker beneath the evening sky. For a few peaceful moments, the atmosphere feels almost magical. Stories are shared. Old soldiers joke about impossible battles. You miss the simple luxury of warmth that doesn't require standing next to a dying campfire. Yet, as your eyes grow heavy, you realize something fundamental. This is what it actually means to serve. It isn't about standing proudly in sunlit courtyards or listening to bards sing of glory. It's about the mud, the cold, the endless chores, and the quiet endurance when nobody is watching. Tomorrow, the march begins again. The mud will still be there. The armor will still be heavy. The road will still stretch endlessly into the distance. But as you pull your thin blanket a little tighter against the wind, you know you'll rise when the morning shouting starts. Because you are no longer just an observer of this world. You are earning your place within it. You even miss climbing endless staircases. Amazing how quickly comfort becomes precious once it's gone. As sleep slowly arrives, one realization settles into your mind. Campaign life isn't mostly fighting. It's marching, waiting, working, enduring discomfort day after day. The actual battle, strangely enough, occupies only a tiny fraction of a soldier's experience. Tomorrow you'll discover that waiting can become even harder than marching. Because medieval armies often spend weeks or even months outside enemy castles, hoping hunger will accomplish what swords cannot. After days of marching through mud, rain, and endless countryside, the news finally spreads through the army. You've arrived, not at home, not at a welcoming town, at an enemy castle. From a distance it looks magnificent. Tall stone walls rise above the surrounding hills. Square towers stand like silent giants. Colorful banners flutter in the wind. The entire fortress appears almost majestic beneath the afternoon sun. For a brief moment, you admire the view. Then someone quietly reminds you of an important detail. Your job isn't to admire the castle. Your job is to take it. Unfortunately, medieval castles are remarkably good at preventing exactly that. This is why people build them. The commander gathers his officers. Maps are unfolded. Messengers hurry between groups. Scouts report what they've seen. Everyone discusses plans. You expect a dramatic speech followed by an immediate attack. Instead, everyone waits. Welcome to one of the least exciting realities of medieval warfare, sieges. The word itself sounds dramatic. The experience usually isn't. Most castles aren't captured through glorious charges. They're captured through patience. Sometimes extraordinary patience. Rather than storming the walls immediately, armies often surround the fortress. Roads are blocked, supplies are interrupted, messengers are intercepted. The goal is surprisingly simple. Wait until the defenders run out of food. It sounds straightforward. It also takes an astonishing amount of time. Days, weeks, sometimes months, occasionally even longer. You suddenly realize something uncomfortable. The enemy isn't the only group waiting. You are too. The army begins building a camp around the castle. Temporary wooden shelters appear. Cooking areas are organized. Storage spaces are arranged. Defensive trenches are dug. Your temporary village grows larger every day. Oddly enough, daily life begins feeling almost normal. At least as normal as life can feel while staring at enemy walls every morning. Your routine settles into an exhausting rhythm. Wake before sunrise. Inspect weapons. Feed horses. Repair equipment. Stand guard. Practice drills. Help build siege works. Eat simple meals. Sleep. Repeat. Battle never arrives. Routine does. Some days the most exciting event is watching a cart approach the castle. Everyone immediately wonders whether it carries food, weapons, reinforcements, or perhaps bad news. Life becomes strangely focused on tiny details. A bird flying over the walls, smoke rising from castle chimneys, movement along the battlements. Every observation feels important. Boredom sharpens curiosity. The defenders inside experience their own routine. You occasionally glimpse them walking along the walls, repairing stonework, watching your camp. Sometimes they wave, not always politely. Occasionally someone shouts an insult across the distance. It's surprisingly childish. Two heavily armed medieval armies exchanging playground-level insults. Apparently history contains more of that than textbooks usually mention. Engineers eventually begin constructing siege machines, large wooden towers, heavy battering rams, massive catapults. Watching skilled craftsmen build these enormous structures is fascinating. Everything is measured carefully. Large beams are lifted into place, ropes twisted, wheels assembled. The machines look impressive. They also require enormous amounts of labor. Thousands of hours disappear into construction. Again, patience proves more valuable than excitement. Food remains a constant concern. Supplying an army is incredibly difficult. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of mouths require feeding every day. Grain, meat, water, firewood, animal fodder. Everything must arrive continuously. If supply wagons fail to appear, your own army can become almost as hungry as the people inside the castle. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Weather remains equally unforgiving. One week, the sun beats down relentlessly. The next week, cold rain returns. Your clothes never seem completely dry. Your boots remain muddy. Tents leak. Campfires struggle. Every season introduces new frustrations. The castle walls remain exactly where they were. Patient, silent, almost mocking your discomfort. Then illness arrives. Not dramatic illness. Ordinary illness. Coughs spread through camp. Fevers appear. Minor infections become serious. Crowded military camps create ideal conditions for disease. Doctors do what they can. Sometimes they succeed. Sometimes they don't. You begin realizing that disease may claim more lives than battle itself. An uncomfortable truth repeated throughout much of history. Despite everything, moments of humanity continue appearing. A soldier teaches another how to repair torn boots. Someone shares extra bread with a hungry companion. Friends laugh over stories from home. Even during war, ordinary kindness survives. Perhaps that's one of history's quieter miracles. As weeks pass, the castle finally begins showing signs of strain. Less smoke rises from the kitchens. Fewer guards appear on the walls. Movement slows. The defenders look thinner, tired. The siege is working, not because of glorious combat, because hunger is relentless. You find yourself feeling strangely conflicted. Victory achieved through starvation doesn't resemble heroic paintings. It feels quieter, sadder, more human. War, you've discovered, rarely looks the way legends describe it. Eventually, rumors spread through camp. Negotiations may begin soon. Perhaps the defenders will surrender. Perhaps not. Nobody knows. Once again, waiting becomes your greatest task. You stand outside the castle at sunset. The walls glow orange beneath the fading light. For a moment, everything appears peaceful, beautiful even. Then you remember why you're here. Thousands of people wait for one decision. One gate to open. One surrender. Or one desperate final attack. Tomorrow, the waiting may finally end. Because when negotiations fail, medieval armies have only one option left: to climb the walls, force the gates, and discover that attacking a defended castle is every bit as terrifying as you feared. The castle gates never open. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. The siege drags on, and before long you begin measuring time not by exciting events but by meals. Breakfast, dinner, breakfast again. When every day looks almost identical, food becomes one of the few things capable of breaking the routine. Unfortunately, medieval cuisine is not especially interested in keeping you entertained. If you imagined heroic banquets every evening, you're about to be disappointed. Those spectacular feasts do happen. Occasionally, usually for weddings, royal celebrations, or major victories. Life during a military campaign is much less theatrical. Most mornings begin with coarse bread. Dense, heavy, filling. The sort of bread that seems determined to remind you how hard medieval life really is. Freshly baked loaves are wonderful when available. The problem is that fresh bread doesn't stay fresh for long. After several days, yesterday's loaf begins resembling construction material more than breakfast. You quickly discover one useful technique. Dip the bread into broth or ale. Otherwise, your teeth may end up working harder than the army. Ale accompanies many meals. Not because medieval people spend all day celebrating. Clean drinking water isn't always easy to find. Small beer or weak ale is often considered a safer option. It's much less alcoholic than modern beer. You aren't stumbling across the battlefield. You're simply staying hydrated. At least that's the plan. Meat appears whenever supplies allow. Usually salted, sometimes smoked, occasionally dried. Fresh meat is a luxury during long campaigns. Salt preserves food remarkably well. It also gives everything a rather familiar flavor after several weeks. You begin imagining vegetables, the way modern people dream about vacations. Cheese becomes another dependable companion. Hard cheeses travel well. They survive long journeys. Unlike your patience. Butter occasionally appears. So do onions, leeks, beans. If you're fortunate, perhaps a handful of apples from a nearby orchard. Fresh produce feels almost exciting after days of preserved food. One crisp apple can improve an entire afternoon. Cooking remains surprisingly simple. Large iron pots hang above campfires. Stews bubble slowly. Bread warms beside glowing coals. The aroma drifts through camp, encouraging hungry soldiers to gather long before the meal is actually ready. Everyone watches the pot. Nobody wants to miss supper. Your appetite grows steadily stronger after marching, digging trenches, and practicing with weapons all day. Almost anything tastes wonderful when you've earned it through exhaustion. That said, medieval cooking has its limitations. Spices exist. They're simply expensive. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. These exotic treasures travel enormous distances before reaching Europe. Most ordinary soldiers encounter them only rarely. Wealthy nobles enjoy greater variety. The average campaign kitchen focuses less on luxury and more on keeping everyone alive. You slowly begin appreciating plain food, not because it's extraordinary, because hunger changes expectations. Food becomes fuel, comfort, routine, a reminder that another day has successfully ended. Of course, meals also reveal the realities of medieval social hierarchy. The highest-ranking nobles often eat separately. Their tables receive better bread, better meat, better wine, better everything. Meanwhile, ordinary soldiers make do with simpler portions. You're somewhere in the middle, close enough to observe noble privilege, far enough away that it rarely benefits you. Some things never change across history. Occasionally, hunting parties leave camp. The surrounding forests offer deer, wild boar, rabbits, game birds. Success depends upon skill and luck. Returning hunters are greeted almost like heroes. Fresh meat immediately lifts everyone's spirits. Even the cooks seem happier. Unfortunately, hunting doesn't always succeed. Some days the forest provides little more than disappointment. Then it's back to salted meat once again. Food storage presents constant challenges. Without refrigeration, everything depends upon careful planning. Barrels, salt, drying, smoking, timing. One mistake can spoil precious supplies. And spoiled food creates dangerous illness. The camp's quartermasters spend much of their time calculating exactly how much grain remains, how much meat is left, how many days the army can continue waiting. War, you've learned, is often won by mathematics disguised as logistics. Around the evening fire, conversations frequently drift toward food from home. Someone misses warm pies. Another dreams about roasted chicken. A third insists his mother's bread was softer than anything found in camp. Whether these memories are entirely accurate hardly matters. Nostalgia improves every recipe. The stories become richer each night, perhaps because everyone secretly enjoys imagining a warm kitchen instead of another cold evening outdoors. Even knights occasionally joke about meals. One veteran laughs that he has eaten so much salted pork during campaigns that he probably grunts in his sleep. The camp erupts with tired laughter. Humor, like food, keeps morale alive. As autumn approaches, the weather grows colder. Hot stew suddenly feels luxurious. Steam rising from wooden bowls warms frozen hands. Simple meals become small celebrations, not because the recipe has improved, because the temperature has fallen. Perspective changes everything. One evening you finish another modest supper while watching smoke drift lazily into the darkening sky. The castle still stands. The siege continues. Nothing dramatic has happened today. Yet somehow the day feels complete. You marched, worked, ate, laughed a little, survived. Perhaps that's enough. History often remembers kings, battles, and famous victories. It rarely remembers the thousands of ordinary meals that quietly sustain the people who made those victories possible. Tomorrow you'll discover another unpleasant truth about knighthood. The shining armor may be expensive. The horse may be magnificent. But together, they create a financial burden so enormous that many knights spend their lives worrying less about dragons and more about debt. By now, you've grown accustomed to sleeping outdoors, eating simple meals, and marching through mud. You assumed those would be the hardest parts of being a knight. Then one evening, while you're cleaning your armor beside the campfire, an older knight sits down next to you with a tired sigh. He quietly says something you weren't expecting. Battles are expensive. At first you think he's joking. Swords don't charge admission. Enemies certainly don't send invoices. How expensive can war possibly be? The older knight simply smiles. You'll understand soon enough. As it turns out, becoming a knight isn't merely physically demanding. It's financially exhausting. From childhood, you've imagined the shining armor, the magnificent horse, the polished sword, the colorful banner fluttering proudly above your head. What nobody explains is that someone has to pay for all of it. Usually, that someone is you. Your armor alone represents an astonishing investment. Every steel plate has been carefully forged. Every rivet fitted by skilled craftsmen. Leather straps require constant replacement. Buckles wear out, padding tears, helmets dent. After every campaign, repairs become necessary. Steel survives battle surprisingly well. Your wallet does not. Weapons create another endless expense. A knight rarely carries only one sword. There may be a longsword, a dagger, perhaps a mace or warhammer, a lance for mounted combat. Shields eventually crack. Sword edges require sharpening. Broken weapons must be replaced. None of this comes cheaply. Then there are the horses. Plural, not horse. Horses. Many successful knights own more than one. A powerful destrier for battle. A lighter riding horse for travel. Pack animals for equipment. Each animal needs food, shoeing, medical care, shelter. If one horse becomes injured or dies, replacing it may cost a small fortune. You suddenly realize why experienced knights spend so much time worrying whenever their horses limp. It's not only affection, it's economics. Maintaining a warhorse resembles maintaining a luxury automobile, except the automobile occasionally decides to bite you. Servants also become necessary. At minimum, many knights employ squires, sometimes additional helpers. Someone must care for equipment, manage horses, carry supplies, prepare camps, handle countless daily responsibilities. These people deserve wages, or food, or land. Whatever arrangement exists, supporting them requires resources. The financial obligations continue growing. Your noble clothing needs replacement. Your cloak wears thin after countless rainy campaigns. Boots eventually split. Gloves tear, belts stretch. Even looking respectable costs money. After all, appearances matter in medieval society. A poorly equipped knight reflects badly upon both himself and his family. Reputation carries real value. You begin understanding why noble families carefully manage their estates. Land isn't simply a symbol of status. It's income. Fields produce grain. Villages pay rents. Forests provide timber. Mills grind flour. Without these sources of wealth, maintaining knightly life becomes nearly impossible. Warriors depend just as much upon accountants as they do upon blacksmiths. Of course, harvests don't always cooperate. One year heavy rain destroys crops. Another year drought arrives. Sometimes disease affects livestock. Income falls. Expenses remain exactly the same. Armor still requires repairs. Horses still require feeding. The financial pressure quietly increases. Some knights borrow money. Wealthy merchants occasionally provide loans. Powerful nobles may offer assistance. But debts have an unpleasant habit of lingering long after the excitement of battle has faded. Interest accumulates. Payments become overdue. An honorable knight can find himself lying awake at night worrying less about enemy armies than unpaid obligations. The image feels surprisingly modern. Campaigns themselves create additional costs. Travel damages equipment, replacing broken wagon wheels, buying extra food, paying guides, hiring craftsmen. Everything consumes resources. Victory doesn't necessarily guarantee profit. Sometimes successful campaigns leave everyone poorer than before. There are opportunities to improve your fortunes. Ransoming captured nobles can provide significant income. A wealthy prisoner may pay generously for freedom. Loot occasionally rewards victorious soldiers. Royal gifts sometimes recognize loyal service. These fortunate moments certainly happen. The problem is their unpredictability. Planning your financial future around winning valuable prisoners resembles planning retirement around lottery tickets. Possible, not advisable. Meanwhile, wealthy lords often appear much more comfortable. Their estates generate greater income. Their castles protect valuable resources. Their families possess generations of accumulated wealth. You begin noticing an uncomfortable truth. Not all knights begin the race from the same starting line. Some inherit enormous advantages. Others spend decades trying merely to keep pace. One rainy afternoon, you help repair damaged armor beneath a shelter. The blacksmith quietly mentions the cost of replacing a cracked breastplate. The amount makes your stomach sink. You suddenly become much more careful while carrying expensive equipment. Dropping someone's helmet now feels almost as terrifying as dropping a newborn child. As autumn deepens, financial conversations become increasingly common around campfires. One knight worries about failed harvests. Another discusses rising costs of horse feed. Someone else wonders whether his estate manager collected enough rent during his absence. It sounds less like legendary warriors preparing for battle, and more like neighbors discussing household budgets. History has a wonderful way of reminding us that even famous warriors had ordinary concerns. As darkness settles over the camp, you finish polishing your armor one careful piece at a time.